Today we're going to quickly talk through a Instagram live that Geoff Wilson from Sports Card Investor did with Don Diego Trading, aka Laura, around Disney Lorcana versus Pokemon TCG. Now, there's a few things here that these guys had a bit of a debate on. The internet's gone a little bit wild from a trading card hobby perspective. I don't want to necessarily talk to the things they talk to in their video. I'm just going to talk to some things related to cultural relevance that I've touched on before, and how this should be factored into this debate, and how cultural relevance is everything when you're looking to buy and sell trading cards. Now, I'll get to that in a second. I'll give you a quick recap first, and then I'll touch on, that as we go along. Now, if you're not sure what Disney Lorcana is, it is a TCG that Disney is releasing, as you can see over here, that I think releases on the 1st or 3rd of September 2023. I can't recall which. It's basically a trading card game that sort of encompasses everything that, Disney does. Movies, TV shows, video games, characters across, all of those things are going to be factored into this new TCG. Now, this has popped off a little bit sometime last year, I think it was, where some pre-release cards blew up and got a lot of people talking, and people were talking about how this was going to be the next pump and dump. So with that factored in mind, when they saw, Geoff Wilson come out and say, Disney Lorcana is going to kill Pokemon, that sort of, set off a lot of alarm bells with people down in the comments of the many videos and clips that were posted, around the internet. Now, I think this is a really interesting thing from Geoff. A lot of people came in and sort of believed Geoff at 100%. I think Geoff's having a bit of fun with this. I think he's coming at it from a perspective where he probably does believe the things that he's saying, but maybe not to the level of, WWE style heel that he's taken with this, debate, which I thought was, pretty funny from him. I like this sort of stuff, in the hobby. So hopefully we can see, more of it, more discussion, so on and so forth. It's this video in particular here where he sort of challenges people to debate, because he was talking about how lots of idiot Pokemon collectors, and he's having a bit of fun. He may not have used the word idiot, so I do apologize if that was the case, but you can see the comments on that if you want to know a little bit more, which I can show you over here, right, where you've had a few people saying, like, Pokemon collectors are losing their damn minds, they've got no idea what they're talking about, so on and so forth. Don Diego Trading says, sees that and says we need to have a chat. So they had a bit of a live. I saw only snippets of it. I didn't enjoy it completely based on what I saw. It seemed to be Geoff wanting to have, a pretty good debate on the situation, but Laura maybe seemed a little bit awkward or reserved based on, the little bit that I saw, and she seemed to come out with one-liners. So it didn't appear to have, a proper debate on the situation. And I think the thing that is super relevant to this is the cultural relevance of Pokemon and how that can't be ignored, right? I'm not sure if Geoff, 100% believes that Pokemon is going to overtake, or Disney Lorcana is going to overtake Pokemon, I should say, and apologies if you can hear my dog, but he was looking for a bit of back and forth on there, and the thing that needs to be kept front of mind is that cultural relevance for Pokemon TCG, because he talks to how, Pokemon TCG doesn't have a whole lot of plays, but it has a whole lot of collectors, right? And that almost can't be ignored, right? The core people behind, this IP, outside of the fact that, okay, maybe people outside video games, maybe people outside of, my generation, your generation, don't know a whole lot about Pokemon. And he's saying that everybody in Disney, or everybody knows Disney films, everybody knows Cars, everybody knows Frozen, so on and so forth. So that's why it should be more relevant. But it's like, no, the vibe, the culture behind people collecting Pokemon cards has been there, for the last 25 years since it started, in 1996 in Japan. It's international. I know Geoff was talking to how the relevance of Disney is huge in the US, which is correct, but you can't ignore that whole international market either. There's so many people out there that, love Pokemon and are so ingrained in Pokemon culture because they collected the cards in the original TCG, they played the video games, they watched the anime, all these kinds of things that's so ingrained in their culture, in their DNA as individuals, which is then passed on to, other generations. Now, I think Disney is obviously still super popular. They're still pumping out movies left, right, and center. Like we've just seen, a new announcement for Moana live action, which I think is, ridiculous. I've got a daughter, she loves Moana, so that's why it's front of mind for me. But I don't think Disney fandom is the same as it was, 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, even when I was a kid in the 90s, right? Disney was everything. But I think that's been surpassed by so many other IPs that have come from all over the world, right? To expect, Disney collectors, because people love watching Disney movies, to then all of a sudden collect a Disney TCG, I think is a little bit, hard to believe. And you can't ignore that cultural relevance. I keep going back to cultural relevance. Disney has cultural relevance across so many different IPs, across so many different, streams of media, so many streams of, collectibles, all these kinds of things. Can we see it hyper-focused in on the TCG like we are seeing, from Pokemon? I don't know, and I think that needs to be kept front of mind if you're somebody that wants to come in and sort of, buy Pokemon cards, collect Pokemon cards, or Disney Lorcana cards, right? Or you think Disney Lorcana is going to overpass Pokemon. That's the thing you need to keep front of mind. And we spoke about this on the channel About a month ago, maybe 5 weeks ago, you can see over here with this little, Mojo Sports in the thumbnail, because I spoke about the pitfalls of sports card investing, specifically underrated sports cards. And this discussion came off the back of an interview I saw Mama Breaks did, where she talked about, seeing pitchers in baseball being, severely undervalued compared to hitters. So she started stocking up on those because she thinks they're going to be, appreciated long term a little bit better than what they have. And what I talked in the video is that might be the case, right? But what you need to factor in is baseball as a sport. Hitters have always been much more preferred over pitchers outside of, a few outliers here and there. Hitters on average have been more preferred since the dawn of the game, right? They've always been the ones that, smack the ball out of the park and get people, super excited about watching. They're the ones that, advertising agencies, apologies for my voice, I'm getting sick. So if I look a bit down, that's why. But they're the ones that advertising agencies and sporting organizations have always wanted to pay more money for. I spoke in that video about, soccer as well. Strikers, attacking midfielders. They've always been the ones that have commanded the big bucks from a salary perspective. Yes, there are outliers elsewhere, but if you're somebody that wants to buy a goalkeeper or a defender and say they are undervalued to the point you think they're going to surpass a striker, I think that's a little bit naive. And you need to factor in that soccer as a sport has been around for over 150 years. So the cultural relevance is there, not just for collectors of those cards, but also people that appreciate the game, people that go, every week to watch the game. Inherently, they're pushed more towards the exciting players, the flair players, the attacking midfielders, people like Maradona, Pele, Cristiano Ronaldo, Messi, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I can name names for days here, right? They're the ones that always grow and get the most love from fans. Yes, people are appreciated in other positions, but you guys get what I'm trying to say. The point I'm trying to make is if you want to be somebody that's chasing Disney Lorcana or you're chasing these underrated sports cards, you need to factor in the cultural relevance. Okay, how long has this sport been around? What's the sentiment been towards these players, towards these positions, towards these teams, towards these IPs been since the dawn of time? You need to factor that into your buying and selling because that should be a pretty big driver on the decision for you to buy or sell different things. Now, hopefully that point came across in what I was trying to explain. I think obviously Disney is very prominent. It's still very popular. They're growing and growing so much that they've bought these new IPs like Star Wars and all these other things. But will that translate? Will that love for Disney as a whole, will that love for Disneyland translate to Lorcana TCG? I have my doubts, right? We need to wait to see how things are going to, pan out. But that doesn't mean that Lorcana can't be successful, right? I just think for them to knock off Pokemon, as people have alluded to in many different videos, that's a really hard task to do, right? The cultural relevance for Pokemon is insane. It's not getting moved around anytime soon. Could Lorcana TCG get there? Maybe, maybe not. But, that cultural relevance for Pokemon is too big to ignore. So I'm keen to get your thoughts on this, down in the comments below. I think it was a good, set of videos from Geoff. I could tell pretty clearly he was having some fun as a marketer. That's what he does for a living. He's obviously an entrepreneur and things like that. But you guys, again, get what I'm trying to say. I thought it was interesting. I saw through it a little bit. I think he does believe most of what he's saying, but he's looking for that debate. He's looking for that engagement. He wants to have the discussion. He wants to push back and forth, so on and so forth. He wants to get that dialogue going. He's being that heel. He's leaning into it, getting that discussion going, because that's the kind of thing we need in the hobby. You want these kinds of debates. You want that back and forth around trying to understand, the collector's mind. From my perspective, like I said many times throughout this video, I always go back to cultural relevance. Cultural relevance is everything. And just because you've got sports card investors now trying to make money on certain cards, that's not going to change the sentiment across the board, right? Yes, I'm not saying don't buy these things. I'm not saying don't invest in these kinds of things or don't collect these kinds of positions or plays. If you like it, collect it. But if you're buying it to think you're going to make it big, be very careful. Like anything, right? Like any sports card that you're buying and trying to make it big is a bit ludicrous to me. But just remember that cultural relevance, right? Sport's been around for a long time. The fans are the ones that make the sport relevant in the first place. The players are obviously out there in the field doing their thing. But trends have happened for the last 100 years that haven't really shifted that much on a macro scale. So I'm really keen to get your thoughts on this. Like I said, let me know if you watched the full debate. Let me know if I missed anything. Let me know where I can find it because I can't seem to see it anywhere. I want to give a shout out to, Dustin from Sports Card Dad. A few other people like Opossum Bud spoke about this. I've seen snippets of Dustin's video. I haven't seen all of Opossum Bud's video. But check them out. They've spoken about this as well. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.